You work hard and still feel stuck. You wake up early, you push through long days, you tell yourself you're doing everything right. And yet, at the end of the month, nothing changes. The numbers don't lie, the stress doesn't lie, the quiet fear at night doesn't lie. Because deep down, you feel it. You're not just low on money, you're trapped. And the hardest part, it doesn't look like a trap. It looks like responsibility. It looks like survival. It looks like doing your best. But in reality, it's a system, a mindset, and a cycle quietly holding you in place. Welcome to this audiobook, Low Income Trap. Here's how to break free. In this audiobook, you're going to uncover something most people never fully see, not because it's hidden, but because it's normalized. You'll discover why working harder alone doesn't set you free, why earning more doesn't always solve the problem, why smart people stay stuck for years, even decades, and most importantly, you'll learn how to break the cycle, step by step, thought by thought, decision by decision. We're going to walk through 25 chapters together. We'll break down the invisible traps, the habits that silently drain your progress, the emotional patterns that keep you reacting instead of building, and then we'll rebuild a new mindset, a new relationship with money, a new standard for your time, your focus, your energy. This is not financial advice. This is awareness, because awareness is where control begins. Here's the truth most people don't say out loud. You don't stay stuck because you're lazy. You stay stuck because the system is designed to keep you busy, not free. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand it, you can finally start moving differently. Here's a line I want you to remember. The trap isn't that you earn too little. It's that your life is structured to keep it that way. Let that sit with you, because everything we're about to explore will build on that idea. And before we begin, make a quiet agreement with yourself. If something in this audiobook hits you, don't ignore it. If a truth makes you uncomfortable, sit with it. And if you feel that moment, that shift, where you realize you've been playing smaller than you should, that's not a bad thing. That's the beginning. If this journey resonates with you at any point, take a second to like this or leave a comment sharing the moment that changed your perspective. Not for anyone else, but as a signal to yourself that you're paying attention now. Because attention is where transformation starts. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invisible Cage. Most people don't realize they're trapped because nothing around them looks like a cage. There are no bars, no locks, no alarms, just routines. Wake up, work, pay bills, repeat. And inside that repetition, something subtle happens. You stop questioning. You stop exploring. You stop imagining anything different because your energy is spent surviving. Think about it. How many decisions in your life are actually yours? And how many are reactions? You take a job because you need money. You stay because you need stability. You delay learning because you don't have time. You avoid risks because you can't afford mistakes. And slowly, your life becomes a series of necessary moves instead of intentional ones. That's the cage, not force, not control, but limitation disguised as responsibility. There's a concept economists talk about. Situations where earning more can actually leave you worse off because you lose support systems, benefits, or stability. But this audiobook is not about policy. It's about something deeper. the psychological version of that trap. Because even when opportunities exist, most people don't take them. Not because they can't, but because their thinking has adapted to the cage. You start telling yourself things like, I can't risk it. I'll do it later. I just need to get through this month. And those thoughts feel logical. They feel responsible. But they also keep you exactly where you are. Because here's the truth. Survival thinking protects you, but it also limits you. It keeps you safe today, but it quietly steals your tomorrow. And the longer you stay in that mode, the harder it becomes to switch out of it. You begin to associate safety with smallness. You begin to fear growth because growth feels unstable. You begin to choose predictability over possibility. And just like that, the cage tightens, not around your body, but around your decisions, around your imagination, around your belief in what's possible. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a decision based on where you want to go, instead of what you're trying to avoid? Think about that, because most people are not building a future. They're escaping a present, and there's a difference, a powerful one. When you're escaping, you choose what feels easier. When you're building, you choose what moves you forward. And those are rarely the same thing. This is where the shift begins. Not with money, not with opportunity, but with awareness. You have to see the cage before you can step outside of it. You have to recognize the patterns before you can break them. Because if you don't, you'll keep doing more of the same, hoping for a different result, working harder, pushing longer, waiting for something to change. But nothing changes because the structure hasn't changed. And that's what we're going to start dismantling, piece by piece. In the next chapter, we're going to expose one of the most dangerous illusions keeping people stuck. The belief that more effort alone will set you free. And once you see it clearly, you'll never approach your work, your time, or your income the same way again. Chapter 2. The Hard Work Illusion. You've been told something your entire life. Work harder, and things will get better. Push more. Sacrifice more. Give more time. Take fewer breaks. And eventually, you'll make it. That belief feels right. It feels honorable. It feels like the path of discipline. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Hard work alone does not guarantee freedom. Let that sink in. Because this is where many people get stuck for years. They are not lazy. They are not careless. They are not unmotivated. They are exhausted. Exhausted from doing everything they were told would work and still not getting ahead. Think about the structure of your day. You wake up, you give your best energy to your job. You solve problems, you meet expectations, you stay longer when needed. And in return, you get paid just enough to keep going, not enough to stop, not enough to breathe, just enough to repeat. And that's where the illusion lives, because you start believing, if I just work a little harder, things will change. But what actually happens? You burn more energy. You have less time to think, less time to learn, less time to build something for yourself. So you stay in the same position, just more tired. That's not progress. That's controlled motion. It feels like movement, but it leads nowhere. Let me say something clearly. If your effort only maintains your current life, it's not building your future. And that realization hits hard, because it forces you to ask a different question. Not, how can I work harder? But, how can I work differently? This is the shift most people avoid, Because working differently requires thinking, and thinking requires space. And space is exactly what the trap takes away from you. When you're constantly busy, you don't have time to step back. You don't have time to question. You don't have time to redesign your life. So you stay inside the loop. There's a pattern here that's easy to miss. The harder you work inside a system that limits you, the stronger that system becomes. Because your effort feeds it, your time feeds it, your focus feeds it. And slowly, without realizing it, you become dependent on the very structure that's holding you back. That's the trap. It's not that work is bad. Work is necessary. Work builds discipline. Work creates momentum. But when all your work is spent sustaining, you never get to building. And building is what creates freedom. Let me give you a different perspective. There are two types of effort. Effort that keeps you alive, and effort that moves you forward. Most people spend 100% of their time on the first one, very little on the second. And over time, that imbalance defines their entire life. Because survival effort resets every month. Bills come back. Expenses return. Time disappears. But growth effort compounds. It builds, it expands, it creates options. And options are the opposite of a trap. So the question becomes, where is your effort going? Right now, as you listen to this, how much of your energy is going toward maintaining your current situation? And how much is actually building something beyond it? Be honest with yourself. Because this is where everything starts to shift. You don't escape the trap by working more hours. You escape it by redirecting your effort, even if it's just a small portion at first, even if it's just 1 hour a day. 1 hour of focused, intentional effort can begin to change everything. Not overnight, not instantly, but consistently. Because consistency applied in the right direction is more powerful than intensity in the wrong one. And this is where most people underestimate themselves. They think they need a massive change, a big opportunity, a perfect moment. But real change starts smaller than that. It starts with awareness, then a decision, then a shift in how you use your time. And that shift becomes momentum. Let me give you something to remember. Working harder in the wrong direction only takes you further away from where you want to be. That's not failure. That's misalignment. And misalignment can be corrected. But only if you see it. Only if you stop long enough to ask, is what I'm doing actually leading me somewhere better? Because if the answer is no, then continuing the same pattern is not discipline. It's delay. And delay is one of the most expensive habits you can have. It costs you time. It costs you opportunities. It costs you years. Years that you don't get back. So here's the shift we're making in this audiobook. We are not chasing effort. We are chasing direction. Because direction determines everything. In the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to uncover why most people never even attempt to break out. Not because they can't, but because they've been conditioned not to try. And once you see that conditioning clearly, you'll start to notice it everywhere. In your thoughts, in your decisions, in the limits you've accepted without question. And that awareness, that's where real change begins. Chapter 3. The conditioning you never questioned. Before you ever earned your first paycheck, before you ever worried about bills, before you ever felt pressure to figure life out, something was already shaping you quietly, consistently, without asking for your permission. It was shaping how you think about money, how you think about work, how you think about what's possible for you. And the most dangerous part, it felt normal because you grew up inside it. Let's slow this down for a moment. Think back. What were you taught about success? Maybe it sounded like this. Get a stable job. Don't take risks. Be grateful for what you have. Work hard and stay consistent. None of those are wrong, but none of them are complete because they focus on stability, not expansion. They focus on safety, not growth. And over time, that mindset becomes your default. You don't question it. You live inside it. You build your life around it. And without realizing it, you start to limit yourself before life ever does. This is what conditioning looks like. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's a quiet voice in your head that says, people like me don't do that. That's too risky. I'll try later. I'm not ready yet. And those thoughts feel like your own, but they're not. They're learned, repeated, reinforced over years, from family, from school, from society, from watching others struggle, and deciding you don't want to fail like they did. So you play it safe. You follow the expected path. And at first, it feels responsible. But slowly, it starts to feel restrictive because deep down, you know you're capable of more. You just don't know how to step outside the pattern. And here's where it gets even deeper. Conditioning doesn't just shape your actions. It shapes your standards. You begin to accept things that should be temporary as permanent. You accept being underpaid. You accept being overworked. You accept feeling stuck because it feels familiar, and familiarity is powerful, even when it hurts you. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever stayed in a situation longer than you should have, just because it felt safer than the unknown? That's conditioning. Have you ever talked yourself out of an opportunity before even trying? That's conditioning. Have you ever thought, this is just how life is? That's conditioning. And once you see it, you realize something important. You are not stuck because of your ability. You are stuck because of your belief system. And belief systems can be changed, but not easily, because your mind will resist it. It will try to protect you. It will tell you, stay where you are. Don't risk it. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't fail, because your mind is designed for survival, not expansion. It wants certainty. It wants control. It wants predictability. But growth requires the opposite. It requires stepping into uncertainty. It requires discomfort. It requires doing things that feel unfamiliar. And that's where most people stop. Not because they can't move forward, but because it feels wrong to do so. And that feeling, that hesitation, that internal resistance is not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's a sign you're stepping outside your conditioning. Let that sink in, because this changes everything. The discomfort you feel when trying something new is not danger, it's growth. But if you've been conditioned to avoid discomfort, you'll retreat. You'll go back to what feels safe, and the cycle continues. That's why awareness is so important. You have to catch yourself in those moments. You have to pause and ask, is this fear or is this conditioning? Because they feel the same, but they are not. Fear is natural. Conditioning is learned. And learned patterns can be unlearned. This is where you begin to take control, not by forcing yourself to change everything overnight, but by questioning the things you've never questioned before. Why do I believe this? Where did this idea come from? Is this actually true or just familiar? Because once you start asking better questions, you start seeing new possibilities. And possibilities are the first crack in the cage. Let me give you something powerful to remember. You don't break free by doing more. You break free by thinking differently first. Everything else follows that. Your actions, your habits, your results. But it starts in your mind, and that's where we're focusing right now. In the next chapter, we're going to take this even further. We're going to uncover how your environment reinforces the trap, even when you're trying to escape it. And once you see how your surroundings influence your behavior, you'll understand why change feels so difficult and how to finally take control of it. Dear friend, we are just starting to work on this channel, so your likes and subscriptions will greatly help us grow. Don't be indifferent. Thank you. Chapter 4. The environment that keeps you small. You can change your mindset. You can push yourself to think bigger. You can start questioning your habits. You can even feel motivated for a moment. But then you go back to your normal life, the same people, the same routines, the same conversations, the same expectations, and slowly that new mindset begins to fade. Not because it was weak, but because your environment is stronger. Let's be honest about something most people avoid. Your environment is not neutral. It is either pulling you forward or holding you in place. There is no middle ground. Every conversation you have, every person you spend time with, every space you exist in is shaping your thinking. And if that environment is built around survival, it will keep you there. Think about the people around you, not with judgment, just with awareness. What do they talk about? Do they talk about growth or problems, solutions or complaints, possibilities or limitations? Because whatever surrounds you becomes normal to you. If everyone around you is struggling, struggle feels normal. If everyone around you is settling, settling feels acceptable. If everyone around you is afraid to try, fear becomes reasonable. And without realizing it, you adapt. Not because you want to, but because that's what humans do. We adjust to our surroundings. We mirror behavior, we absorb energy, and over time, we become a reflection of the environment we spend the most time in. That's not weakness. That's psychology. But if you don't recognize it, it becomes a trap. Because even when you try to grow, you're surrounded by things that pull you back. You start thinking differently, but no one around you understands it. You start taking small risks, but people question you. You start changing your habits, but others stay the same. And slowly, doubt creeps in. Maybe I'm doing too much. Maybe I should just stay where I am. Maybe this isn't for me. And just like that, you shrink back into your old patterns. This is why so many people start strong, but never follow through. It's not because they lack discipline. It's because their environment doesn't support their growth, and growth in isolation is hard. Let me say something clearly. If your environment stays the same, your life will struggle to change. That's not negativity. That's reality. Because your environment reinforces your standards. It defines what feels normal, and anything outside of that feels uncomfortable. But here's the shift. You don't have to completely change your environment overnight. You don't have to cut people off. You don't have to disappear from your life. But you do have to become intentional. You have to start choosing what influences you. Because in today's world, your environment is not just physical, it's digital. What you watch, what you listen to, what you read, who you follow, all of it shapes your thinking. If you spend hours consuming negativity, you will think negatively. If you spend hours watching people complain, you will complain. If you surround your mind with limitation, you will live within limits. But if you start feeding your mind something different, something expands. You begin to see new possibilities, new paths, new ways of thinking, and slowly your internal environment begins to change. And that's where external change starts. Because before you leave your environment physically, you leave it mentally. You stop agreeing with it. You stop accepting it as your final reality. You begin to outgrow it. And that's a powerful moment, but it's also uncomfortable because growth creates distance between who you were and who you're becoming, distance between your old habits and your new standards, distance between you and people who are not evolving. And that distance can feel lonely. But let me give you a truth most people need to hear. Growth is lonely before it becomes powerful. At first, you feel like you're losing connection, like you don't fully fit where you used to, like your mindset is shifting, but your life hasn't caught up yet. That's normal. That's part of the process because you are transitioning from one level to another. And transitions are never comfortable, but they are necessary because if you don't allow that distance to happen, you will stay in the same cycle. You will keep thinking the same way, acting the same way, living the same life. So instead of resisting it, understand it, accept it, use it. Start creating small changes in your environment, even if it's just 1 hour a day. 1 hour where you step outside the noise, 1 hour where you focus on growth, learning, building, thinking differently. That hour becomes your escape, your space, your foundation for something bigger. And over time, that small shift begins to expand into your life. Because what you consistently expose yourself to becomes who you are. Let me give you something to remember. You don't become successful by chance. You become successful by exposure. Exposure to better thinking, better habits, better standards, and that exposure is something you can control. Starting now. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover another layer of the trap, one that lives inside your daily habits, the small decisions that seem harmless, but quietly keep you stuck in the same financial reality. And once you see how powerful those small choices are, you'll realize freedom isn't built in big moments. It's built in what you do every single day. Chapter 5. The small habits that quietly keep you broke. Most people are waiting for a big moment, a breakthrough, a new job, a sudden opportunity, something dramatic that changes everything. But the truth is, your life is not shaped by big moments. It's shaped by small, repeated decisions every single day. And the dangerous part? Most of those decisions feel insignificant. They don't feel like they matter. They don't feel like they're shaping your future, but they are. Quietly, consistently, powerfully. Let's break this down. Think about your average day, not the perfect version. The real one. How you wake up, what you do first, how you spend your time after work, what you consume, what you avoid. Because inside that routine, your future is being built or delayed. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The trap is not always in big mistakes. It's in small leaks. Time leaks, energy leaks, money leaks. And because they're small, you ignore them. You justify them. You repeat them. For example, scrolling for an hour doesn't feel dangerous. Buying something small doesn't feel harmful. Skipping one day of growth doesn't feel like a problem, but stack that over weeks, months, years, and suddenly you're in the same place, wondering why nothing changed. Let me give you something clear. Your life doesn't reflect your intentions. It reflects your habits. That's the truth most people avoid. Because intentions feel good, but habits tell the truth. You can want more, but if your daily actions don't align with that, nothing moves. And this is where the low-income trap becomes invisible. Because it's not just about income, it's about behavior. It's about how you use what you already have, your time, your attention, your energy. Because those three things are your real currency. Money is just a result of how you manage them. Let's talk about time first. Time is the most misunderstood resource. People say they don't have enough of it, but the reality is, most people don't control it. They react to it. They give it away without realizing it. Hours lost to distraction. Hours lost to passive consumption. Hours lost to things that don't move them forward. And by the end of the day, they feel busy, but not productive. There's a difference. Being busy keeps you occupied. Being intentional moves you forward. And most people confuse the two. Now let's talk about energy. Because even if you have time, without energy, you won't use it well. Think about how you feel at the end of your day. Drained, mentally exhausted, unfocused. And then you ask yourself to build something on top of that, to learn, to grow, to improve, but your energy is already gone because you gave it all away earlier to work, to stress, to distractions. So nothing gets built, and the cycle continues. Now let's talk about money. This is where most people focus, but it's often the last thing to fix because money behavior follows mental patterns. If your habits are reactive, your spending will be reactive. If your thinking is short-term, your finances will be short-term. And that's where the trap tightens, because you're not just earning low, you're managing from a place of survival. And survival thinking leads to quick decisions, comfort purchases, avoidance, temporary relief, not long-term growth. And again, none of this feels like a big mistake. It feels normal. But normal is exactly what keeps people stuck. This is why awareness matters so much. You have to start seeing your habits clearly, without judgment, without excuses, just honesty. Ask yourself, where is my time actually going? Where is my energy being drained? What patterns am I repeating every day? Because once you see it, you can change it. And here's the important part. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to start small. One habit, one shift, one decision. Because small changes, repeated daily, create massive results over time. You don't escape the trap overnight. You build your way out, piece by piece, day by day, choice by choice. And the moment you start doing that, something shifts. You stop feeling stuck. You start feeling in control. Even if your situation hasn't changed yet, your direction has. And direction is everything. Let me give you something to hold on to. You don't need a new life. You need new habits that build one. That's where freedom begins. Not in a big moment, but in small, consistent actions. And in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper into one of the biggest hidden drains in your life, your attention. Because in today's world, your attention is constantly being pulled away from what matters. And if you don't take control of it, you will keep building someone else's future instead of your own. Chapter 6, The Attention Economy Trap. There was a time when your biggest limitation was access. Access to information, access to opportunities, access to knowledge. That time is gone. Today, you don't suffer from lack of access. You suffer from lack of focus because your attention is under attack every single day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Something is trying to capture your mind. Notifications, social media, endless content, short bursts of entertainment designed to keep you scrolling. And here's the part most people don't realize. This isn't random, it's designed. Your attention is valuable, more valuable than you think, because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. Let that sink in. If your attention is scattered, your results will be scattered. If your attention is distracted, your progress will be delayed. If your attention is controlled by outside forces, your life will be shaped by them. And that's exactly what's happening to millions of people. They wake up, and the first thing they do is give their attention away. They check their phone, they scroll, they react, before they've even had a moment to think for themselves. And just like that, their mind is no longer theirs. It's being pulled in different directions, different emotions, different comparisons, different distractions. And by the time they start their day, they're already behind, not in time, but in clarity. Because clarity requires stillness, and stillness has become rare. Let me ask you something honestly. How often do you sit in silence without reaching for something? No phone, no noise, no distraction, just you and your thoughts. For most people, that's uncomfortable because they're not used to it. They've trained their mind to always seek stimulation, always seek distraction, always avoid stillness. But here's the truth. The life you want requires focus. And focus requires control over your attention. And if you don't control it, something else will. Now let's connect this back to the low-income trap. Because this is where it gets powerful. If your attention is constantly consumed by low-value input, you will never create high-value output. You will stay reactive. You will stay distracted. You will stay stuck in consumption instead of creation. And creation is where growth happens. Creation of skills, creation of ideas, creation of opportunities. But you can't create if your mind is constantly occupied. This is why so many people feel like they're trying, but not progressing. They're busy, but not building, because their attention is fragmented, pulled in too many directions, with no real focus. And without focus, nothing compounds. Let me give you a powerful shift. Stop thinking of your attention as something passive. Start seeing it as an investment. Every minute you spend is either building you or draining you. There is no neutral. If you spend hours consuming content that doesn't improve you, you're not relaxing. You're reinforcing stagnation. If you spend time comparing yourself to others, you're not learning. You're weakening your confidence. If you spend your mental energy reacting to everything around you, you're not progressing. You're drifting. And drifting is what keeps people stuck for years, not because they're incapable, but because they never focus long enough to build momentum. And momentum is everything. Once you have it, things start moving faster. Opportunities appear, skills develop, confidence grows, but without it, everything feels slow, heavy, frustrating. So the question becomes, how do you take your attention back? It starts with awareness. You have to notice where it's going, track it, observe it, without judgment. Then, You start setting boundaries, not extreme ones, but intentional ones. Less scrolling, less noise, less random input, and more focus. More time spent learning, thinking, building, even if it's just 1 hour a day. 1 hour of protected attention can begin to change your entire trajectory, because during that hour, you're not reacting, you're creating, you're investing in yourself. And over time, that investment compounds. This is how you break the cycle. Not by doing everything at once, but by taking control of the one thing that drives everything else, your attention. Let me give you something to remember. Where your attention goes, your future grows. Protect it, direct it. Use it intentionally, because in a world full of distractions, focus is power, and power is what you need to break free. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover another hidden layer of the trap, your relationship with risk, because many people don't stay stuck because they lack opportunity. They stay stuck because they avoid uncertainty. And once you understand how fear of risk shapes your decisions, you'll finally see why you've been holding yourself back, even when you were ready to move forward. Friend, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with us or not? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Chapter 7. The Fear of Risk That Feels Like Logic. There's a voice in your head that sounds very reasonable. It doesn't scream, it doesn't panic, it doesn't feel emotional. It sounds calm, measured, responsible. It says things like, wait a little longer, make sure it's safe, don't rush into anything, what if it doesn't work? And because it sounds logical, you trust it. But here's the truth, most people never question. Not all logic leads to growth. Some logic keeps you exactly where you are. This is the hidden layer of the low-income trap. It's not just about external limitations, it's about internal hesitation. Because even when opportunities appear, most people don't take them. Not because they can't, but because they're trying to eliminate all risk, and that's impossible. Let's break this down. Risk is not just about losing money, it's about uncertainty. Not knowing what will happen, not having full control. And for a mind that's been trained to survive, that feels dangerous, so you avoid it. You delay decisions, you overthink. You wait for the right moment, but the right moment never comes, because clarity comes after action, not before it. Let me say that again. Clarity is a result of movement, not a prerequisite for it. But most people do the opposite. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel certain. And while they're waiting, nothing changes. Time passes, opportunities fade, and the cycle continues. Because staying where you are feels safer than stepping into the unknown, even if where you are is not where you want to be. That's the paradox. You accept discomfort because it's familiar. You avoid uncertainty because it's unfamiliar, even if uncertainty is the only path forward. This is why so many people stay in jobs they've outgrown, stay in routines that don't serve them, stay in cycles that limit them, because the known discomfort feels easier than the unknown possibility. But here's the shift. Every form of growth requires risk. Learning a new skill, starting something new, changing direction, asking for more. All of it involves uncertainty. And if you try to remove uncertainty completely, you remove growth. That's why playing it safe often leads to staying stuck. Now, this doesn't mean you take reckless action. It doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you redefine how you see risk. Because there are two types: short-term risk and long-term risk. Short-term risk feels uncomfortable now. Trying something new, investing time into learning, stepping outside your routine. It feels uncertain, but it creates possibility. Long-term risk feels comfortable now. Staying where you are, avoiding change, repeating the same patterns, it feels safe, but it creates stagnation. And here's the truth. Most people miss. Avoiding short-term risk creates long-term risk. The risk of staying stuck. The risk of wasted potential. The risk of looking back and realizing nothing changed. And that risk is far greater. But because it's not immediate, you ignore it. You focus on what feels urgent, not what actually matters. This is where you need to shift your perspective. Instead of asking, what if this doesn't work? Start asking, what happens if I never try? Because that question changes everything. It forces you to see the bigger picture. It forces you to think beyond today, beyond this week, beyond your current situation. And when you do that, you realize something powerful. Staying the same is not neutral. It's a decision to remain where you are. And once you see that, you regain control. Because if staying is a decision, so is moving, so is trying, so is changing, and that's where your power is. Not in eliminating risk, but in choosing which risk to take. Let me give you something to remember. The biggest risk is not failure. It's never giving yourself a chance to succeed. Hold on to that, because in the next chapter, we're going to uncover another powerful layer of the trap. Your relationship with money itself. Not how much you have, but how you think about it. Because your financial reality is shaped long before money ever enters your hands. And once you understand that, you'll start to see why income alone doesn't change your life. Chapter 8. The money mindset that keeps you stuck. Most people think money problems are solved with more money. If I just earned more, everything would change. And yes, more income can help. But here's what most people don't realize. If your mindset around money doesn't change, your situation won't either. Because money doesn't just flow through your hands, it flows through your habits, your beliefs, your decisions, and if those patterns stay the same, more money won't fix the problem, it will amplify it. Let's go deeper. From a young age, you start forming ideas about money, not from textbooks, but from experience, watching how people around you handle it, hearing conversations about struggle, feeling stress connected to bills, debt, survival, and slowly, you begin to associate money with pressure, with scarcity, with limitation. Even if you don't realize it, that becomes your baseline. So when money comes into your life, you don't manage it with clarity. You react to it emotionally. You spend to relieve stress. You avoid looking at it. You delay planning. You operate from short-term thinking, not because you're irresponsible, but because your relationship with money was never built intentionally. It was inherited, and inherited patterns repeat themselves. Let me give you a powerful truth. Money doesn't solve problems. It reveals patterns. If your pattern is survival, you will continue surviving. If your pattern is avoidance, you will continue avoiding. If your pattern is short-term thinking, you will stay in short-term cycles. That's why some people earn more and still feel stuck, because nothing changed internally. Now let's talk about something even deeper. Scarcity thinking. This is one of the strongest forces in the low-income trap. Scarcity thinking is not about how much you have. It's about how you think. It's the belief that there is not enough. Not enough money, not enough opportunity, not enough time. And when you operate from that mindset, you make defensive decisions. You hold back. You play small. You avoid investing in yourself because everything feels like a risk. But here's the irony. Scarcity thinking creates more scarcity because it limits your actions. It keeps you in a cycle of protection instead of expansion. Now compare that to abundance thinking. This doesn't mean pretending everything is easy. It doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means understanding that growth is possible, that opportunities can be created, that skills can be built, that your situation is not fixed. And when you think that way, your behavior changes. You start looking for ways to improve. You invest time into learning. You take calculated risks. And those actions create new results. That's the shift. Not from having more money, but from thinking differently about it. Now let's address something important. Many people feel guilty about wanting more. They've been taught that wanting more is selfish, that they should just be grateful, that they should accept what they have. But here's the truth. Wanting more is not greed. It's growth. It's the desire to improve your life, to create stability, to have options, to help others. There is nothing wrong with that. But if you suppress that desire, you limit yourself. You stay where you are because you've convinced yourself that it's enough, even when deep down you know it's not. This is where honesty comes in. You have to be real with yourself. Do you actually want more? Or have you convinced yourself that you don't because it feels safer? Because wanting more requires action. It requires change. It requires stepping outside your comfort zone. And that's uncomfortable, but necessary. Now let's bring this into something practical. Changing your money mindset doesn't happen overnight. It happens through awareness, through small shifts, through new habits. Start paying attention to your thoughts. When you think about money, what comes up? Stress, fear, avoidance, or clarity, control, opportunity? Because those thoughts shape your actions, and your actions shape your results. Then start making small changes. Track your spending, understand your patterns, make intentional decisions, not perfect ones, just better ones. Because improvement compounds, just like everything else. And over time, that new mindset begins to take root. You stop reacting and start directing. You stop surviving and start building. Let me give you something to remember. You don't attract better money by chance. You manage it better by mindset. That's where real change begins. And in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper into something most people overlook, the power of skills. Because income is not just about effort, it's about value. And once you understand how value works, you'll realize that your earning potential is far more in your control than you think. Chapter 9. The Skill Gap. You didn't realize you had. There is a truth about money that most people overlook. It's not just about how hard you work, it's about how valuable your work is. And value is not determined by effort, it's determined by skill. Let that settle for a moment, because this is where many people get frustrated. They work long hours, they show up consistently, they give their energy every single day, and yet their income doesn't reflect that effort, not because they don't deserve more, but because the market doesn't reward effort equally. It rewards value, and value is created through skills. Now here's the part most people don't want to hear. If your income is low, It's often a reflection of the value your current skills provide in the market. That's not an insult. That's not judgment. That's information. And information gives you power. Because if income is tied to value, and value is tied to skills, then your income is not fixed. It's expandable, but only if you're willing to build. Let's go deeper. There are two types of skills. Skills that keep you employed and skills that increase your value. Most people focus only on the first. They learn what they need to do their job. They become reliable, consistent, dependable. And that's good, but it's not enough, because those skills are often replaceable. They maintain your position, but they don't elevate it. Now think about the second type. Skills that increase your value: communication, problem solving, digital skills, creative thinking, sales, adaptability. These are skills that expand your opportunities, that allow you to move, to grow, to earn more. And here's the difference. Employment skills keep you stable. Value skills make you scalable. If you only focus on staying employed, you stay where you are. But if you focus on increasing your value, you create options. And options are what break the trap. Now here's where it connects back to everything we've talked about. Building skills requires time. It requires focus. It requires effort that doesn't pay off immediately. And that's why most people don't do it. Because they're stuck in survival mode. They use all their time maintaining their current life and have nothing left to build a better one. So the cycle continues. But this is where you have to make a shift. Even if it's small. Even if it's just 1 hour a day. 1 hour dedicated to learning something valuable. Not random information, not passive consumption, but intentional skill building. Because that hour is an investment. And unlike most things, this investment compounds. The more you learn, the more valuable you become. The more valuable you become, the more opportunities you attract. And over time, that changes your entire trajectory. Let me ask you something honestly. If you stayed exactly the same for the next 5 years, same skills, same habits, same thinking, would your life change? Or would it look exactly like it does now? Because that's the real risk, not failure, stagnation. And stagnation happens when growth stops, when learning stops, when improvement becomes optional. But here's the truth. In today's world, standing still is moving backward because everything is evolving. Technology, markets, opportunities, and if you're not growing, you're falling behind. Not because you're incapable, but because you're not adapting. And adaptation is a skill, one of the most valuable ones you can build. Now let's talk about something important. You don't need to learn everything. You don't need to overwhelm yourself. You just need to choose a direction, one skill, one area, one focus, and go deep. Consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need to study for 10 hours. You need to show up every day, even when you're tired, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. Because that's where the difference is made, not in motivation, in discipline. And discipline is what separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward. Let me give you something to remember. Your income will grow when your value grows. And your value grows when your skills do. That's the formula. Simple, but not easy. And that's why most people avoid it. But you're not most people. You're here, listening, thinking, becoming aware. And that's where it starts. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover something even deeper. The emotional weight of being stuck. Because this is not just about money. It's about how it feels, the frustration, the pressure, the quiet exhaustion. And once you understand how those emotions influence your decisions, you'll finally be able to take control of them instead of being controlled by them. Chapter 10. The Emotional Cost of Staying Stuck. There's something people don't talk about enough. Not the money, not the bills, not the numbers, but the feeling, the quiet weight you carry every single day, the pressure that sits in your chest, even when everything looks fine on the outside, because being stuck is not just financial, it's emotional. It's waking up tired, not just physically, but mentally. It's feeling like you're trying, but not moving. It's watching time pass while your life feels paused, and that feeling builds slowly, quietly, until one day you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You become someone who settles, someone who delays, someone who stops expecting more, not because you want to, but because it feels easier than being disappointed again. Let's be honest for a moment. How many times have you told yourself, "This is just how life is. I'll figure it out later. Things will change eventually." But deep down, you didn't fully believe it. You just needed something to hold on to, something to quiet the discomfort, because the truth felt too heavy. And that's where emotional exhaustion comes in. Not from doing too much, but from feeling like your effort isn't leading anywhere. That's a different kind of tired, a deeper one, because physical exhaustion can be fixed with rest, but emotional exhaustion comes from misalignment, from living a life that doesn't reflect your potential, from knowing you're capable of more, but not knowing how to reach it. And over time, that gap between where you are and where you feel you should be becomes painful. So what do most people do? They avoid it. They distract themselves. They numb it. They stay busy, because facing that feeling requires honesty. And honesty can be uncomfortable. But here's the truth you need to hear. Avoiding the feeling doesn't remove the problem. It prolongs it. It keeps you in the same cycle, day after day, year after year, and the longer it continues, the heavier it becomes, until it starts affecting everything, your motivation, your confidence, your decisions, because emotions influence action. If you feel stuck, you act small. If you feel overwhelmed, you avoid. If you feel powerless, you don't try. And those actions reinforce the situation. That's how the trap becomes emotional, not just practical. And this is where the shift needs to happen. Not by ignoring the feeling, but by understanding it. Because your emotions are not your enemy. They are signals. They're telling you something is off. Something needs to change. And instead of pushing that away, you need to listen. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What is this frustration trying to show me? What am I avoiding? Because inside that discomfort is clarity. Clarity about what's not working. Clarity about what needs to shift. Clarity about what you've been tolerating for too long. And once you see that, you can start making different decisions, not emotional ones, intentional ones. Because here's the key. You don't break the cycle by waiting to feel better. You break it by acting differently. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence changes emotion, not the other way around. So instead of waiting for motivation, start with small action. Even when you don't feel ready, even when it's uncomfortable, because that's how you begin to take control back. And the moment you do that, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling powerless. You start feeling capable, not because everything changed, but because you did. And that's where real progress begins. Let me give you something to remember. The pain of staying the same will always grow until it becomes stronger than your fear of change. And when that moment comes, you have a choice. Stay where you are, or finally move forward. In the next chapter, we're going to explore something critical, your identity, because the way you see yourself shapes everything, your actions, your limits, your results. And if you don't change that, nothing else will truly change either. If you have watched the video up to this point, please write in the comments which country you are from. It is very interesting to see which corners of the world our viewers come from. Chapter 11. The identity that keeps you where you are. Everything you do, every decision you make, every risk you take, every opportunity you accept or reject is filtered through one thing, your identity. Not who you want to be, not who you could be, but who you believe you are right now. And this is where things get deep. Because most people try to change their life without changing their identity. They try to act differently, but still see themselves the same way. And that creates conflict, because your actions will always return to match your identity. Let me explain. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will unconsciously recreate struggle. If you see yourself as someone who is bad with money, you will continue making poor financial decisions. If you see yourself as someone who can't get ahead, you will stop trying before you even begin. Not because it's true, but because it feels true. And what feels true becomes your reality. This is one of the strongest forces in the low-income trap. It's not just external limitations, it's internal labeling. The quiet statements you repeat to yourself. This is just who I am. I've always been like this. People like me don't succeed like that. And over time, those statements become beliefs. And those beliefs become boundaries, invisible ones, that limit how far you're willing to go. Let me ask you something honestly. When you imagine a better life, do you truly see yourself living it? Or does it feel distant, unrealistic, like something meant for someone else? Because that gap is not about ability. It's about identity. You haven't fully accepted that version of yourself yet. So you don't act like that person. You don't think like them. You don't make decisions like them. And because of that, you don't become them. This is why identity work is so important, because real change doesn't start with action. It starts with self-perception. You have to start seeing yourself differently before your life reflects it. But here's where most people get stuck. They wait for results. Before they change their identity, they think, I'll believe in myself once things improve. But it doesn't work that way, because your beliefs create your actions, and your actions create your results. So, if you wait for results first, you stay in the same cycle. The shift happens when you reverse it. You start thinking differently before the proof exists. You start acting differently before the outcome appears. You begin to align with a version of yourself that you haven't fully become yet. And that feels uncomfortable, because your mind will resist it. It will say, this isn't you. You're pretending. You're not ready. But that's not truth. That's your old identity trying to stay in control. Because identity is familiar. Even when it limits you, even when it hurts you, it's still what you know. And stepping outside of that feels like losing a part of yourself. But here's the reality. You're not losing yourself. You're evolving. You're shedding patterns that no longer serve you. You're stepping into a version of yourself that has been there all along, just waiting to be activated. And this is where intentional change begins. You start asking different questions. Who do I need to become to live the life I want? How would that person think? How would they act? What would they stop tolerating? Because identity is built through repetition, not just what you say, but what you consistently do. Every action you take is a vote for the person you're becoming. Every decision reinforces a pattern. So if you want to change your identity, you don't need a big moment. You need small, consistent alignment. Start showing up differently. Keep promises to yourself. Follow through on small commitments. Choose growth over comfort. And over time, that new identity begins to solidify. You stop seeing yourself as someone stuck and start seeing yourself as someone building. You stop identifying with limitation and start identifying with possibility. And that changes everything, because once your identity shifts, your standards shift. And once your standards shift, your life follows. Let me give you something to remember. You don't get a new life by chance. You get it by becoming a new version of yourself. That's the real transformation, not external, internal. And in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further. We're going to talk about discipline, not the kind that feels forced, but the kind that creates freedom. Because without discipline, awareness means nothing. And once you understand how to build it the right way, you'll finally have the structure needed to break the cycle. For good. Chapter 12. The discipline that builds freedom. There is a word that most people misunderstand. Discipline. For some, it feels heavy, restrictive, forced, like something you have to suffer through, like something that takes away your freedom. But the truth is the opposite. Discipline is not what limits your freedom. It's what creates it. Let that settle. Because everything you've heard about discipline, everything you've felt about it, has probably been shaped by short-term thinking. You associate discipline with discomfort, waking up early, doing things you don't feel like doing, saying no to what's easy. And yes, that's part of it, but that's not the full picture, because what discipline actually does is remove chaos. It removes indecision, it removes inconsistency, it removes the constant negotiation in your mind. And in its place, it creates structure, and structure creates momentum. Let's be honest. Most people don't lack knowledge. They know what they should do. Save more, learn more, focus more, improve their habits. They know. But they don't follow through. Why? Because they rely on motivation, and motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It depends on how you feel, and your feelings change daily. So if your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. That's where discipline comes in. It removes the dependency on feeling. It replaces it with decision. You don't ask yourself, do I feel like doing this? You ask, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? And if the answer is yes, you do it, regardless of how you feel. That's power. Because now, you're in control. Not your emotions, not your mood, not your circumstances, you. And this is where most people struggle, because discipline requires confrontation. You have to face your excuses, You have to face your habits. You have to face the part of you that wants comfort over growth. And that part is strong. It will tell you, just skip today. You've done enough. You can start tomorrow. And if you listen, nothing changes. But if you stand firm, even in small moments, you begin to build something powerful, self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of discipline. Because every time you follow through, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you can rely on your own word, that when you say you'll do something, you do it. And that changes how you see yourself. You stop doubting. You stop hesitating. You start moving with confidence, not because everything is easy, but because you've built consistency. Now let's connect this back to the low-income trap. Breaking out requires more than awareness. It requires action. Repeated action, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the results are not immediate, because that's the part most people avoid. They want fast change, quick results, immediate improvement, but real progress takes time, and discipline is what carries you through that time. It keeps you moving. When motivation fades, it keeps you focused. When distractions appear, it keeps you aligned. When doubt creeps in, and over time, that consistency compounds. Small actions turn into habits. Habits turn into results. Results turn into a new reality. But it starts with discipline. Now here's something important. Discipline doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means doing the right things consistently, even if it's small. Even if it's just 1 hour a day, 1 hour of focused effort. Learning, building, improving, that hour becomes your edge. Because while others are waiting, you're progressing. While others are distracted, you're focused. And over time, that difference becomes visible, not overnight, but inevitably. Let me give you something to remember. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now. That's the shift from short-term comfort to long-term growth. And once you make that shift, you begin to break the cycle, because now you're not reacting to life, you're directing it. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover something even more practical. How to actually start rebuilding your life from where you are, not in theory, not in ideas, but in real actionable steps, because awareness without action changes nothing. And now, it's time to move. Chapter 13, Rebuilding from Where You Are. This is where everything becomes real, not ideas, not concepts, not motivation, action. Because understanding the trap is powerful, but escaping it requires movement. And here's the first thing you need to accept. You don't need a perfect starting point. You need an honest one. Not where you wish you were, not where you think you should be, but where you actually are, right now. Because denial delays progress, but clarity creates direction. So let's begin there. Take a moment and face your reality. Your income, your habits, your time, your energy, not emotionally, objectively, no judgment, no excuses, just truth. Because truth is your foundation, and without a solid foundation, nothing you build will last. Now, once you see clearly where you are, you can start building a path forward, not a perfect plan, a practical one. And it starts with 3 pillars: time, skill, execution. Let's break them down. First, time. You don't need more of it. You need control over it, because right now, your time is likely scattered, pulled in different directions, consumed by things that don't move you forward. So the first step is reclaiming it, even in small amounts. Start with 1 hour a day, just one. An hour that belongs to you. Protected. Intentional. Focused. No distractions. No interruptions. This hour is where your new life begins. Because during that time, you're not surviving. You're building. Now second, skill. This is what you invest that hour into. Not random learning, not passive consumption, but focused improvement. Choose one direction, one skill that has value, something that can increase your opportunities, and commit to it daily, even when it feels slow, even when progress isn't obvious. Because skill building is a long-term game, but it pays off, and when it does, it changes everything. Now third, execution. This is where most people fail, not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't follow through. They plan, they think, they prepare, but they don't act consistently, and without execution, nothing moves. So here's the shift. You don't need to do everything. You just need to do something every day, small actions, repeated, without interruption, because consistency creates momentum, and momentum creates results. Now let's bring this together 1 hour a day. Focused skill building, consistent execution. That's your foundation. Simple, but powerful, because over time, that hour compounds. Day by day, week by week, month by month. And what feels small now becomes significant later. Let me ask you something. If you committed to 1 hour a day for the next 6 months, how different would your life look? New skills, new confidence, new opportunities. It's not impossible. It's just uncommon. Because most people don't stay consistent. They start strong, but they don't continue. And that's where you separate yourself. Not by being perfect, but by staying committed. Even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching. Because that's where real change happens. In the quiet, in the repetition, in the moments no one sees. Let me give you something to hold on to. Your future is built in the hours no one is paying attention to. Protect those hours. Use them. Build with them. Because they are your way out. Now here's something important. This process will not feel exciting every day. It will feel slow, repetitive, sometimes frustrating. But that's normal, because growth is not dramatic. It's gradual. And if you stay with it, you will see change, not instantly, but inevitably. And when that change begins, it builds confidence. It reinforces your identity. It proves to you that you can move forward. And once you feel that, everything shifts. Because now, you're not just hoping for a better life. You're building one, step by step, decision by decision. And that's how you break the trap. Not with one big move, but with consistent, intentional action. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something critical: patience. Because this journey takes time. And if you don't understand how to stay committed through the slow phase, you'll stop before the results appear. And that's where most people fall back into the cycle. So let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. Chapter 14. The patience most people don't have. This is the part where most people fall off. Not at the beginning, not when they first feel motivated, but in the middle, when nothing seems to be happening, when the effort is there, but the results are not, when the work feels real, but the progress feels invisible. That's where patience becomes everything. And that's also where most people quit. Because we live in a world that rewards speed, fast results, quick wins, instant gratification. You post something, you expect engagement. You try something, you expect results. You start something. You expect change. And when it doesn't come quickly, doubt starts to grow. Is this even working? Am I wasting my time? Maybe this isn't for me. And just like that, you stop. Not because it was the wrong path, but because it didn't happen fast enough. Let me give you something real. Most people don't fail because they chose the wrong path. They fail because they didn't stay on it long enough. That's the truth. Because growth is not immediate, it's delayed. You put in effort today, and the results show up later, sometimes much later. And if you don't understand that delay, you'll misinterpret it as failure. But it's not failure, it's process. Let's break this down. When you start building something new, a skill, a habit, a mindset, at first, there's no visible change. You're learning, adjusting, improving, but nothing looks different yet. And that's where patience is tested. Because your mind wants proof. It wants confirmation that what you're doing is working, but the early stages of growth don't provide that. They require trust. Trust in the process. Trust in your actions. Trust that what you're building will eventually show. And that's hard, especially when you've been stuck for a long time, because you want change now. You want relief. You want movement. But real change is built slowly, layer by layer, day by day. And here's the key. Consistency without patience leads to frustration, but consistency with patience leads to transformation. Because when you stay with it, something starts to happen, not immediately, but gradually. You get a little better, a little sharper, a little more confident, and then one day, you notice it. Something clicks, something shifts, something starts to move, and that moment makes everything worth it. But you only reach that moment if you don't quit early. That's the difference. Now let's connect this back to the trap. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck is because they underestimate how long change takes. They try for a short period, don't see results, and go back to old patterns. And those patterns keep them where they started, so the cycle continues. But you're not doing that anymore. You understand the process now. You know that progress is not always visible. You know that results take time. And more importantly, you know that quitting early is the only guaranteed way to stay stuck. So instead, you stay with it. You keep showing up, even when it feels slow, even when it feels repetitive, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because you know something is internally. And that internal change always shows externally. Eventually. Let me give you something to remember. What feels slow now is building something that will move fast later. That's how compounding works. Slow in the beginning, powerful in the end. But only for those who stay consistent long enough. Now here's something important. Patience is not passive. It's not waiting. It's active. It's continuing to act without immediate reward. It's trusting your effort, even when there's no visible outcome yet. And that requires strength, real strength, the kind most people don't build, because they're always chasing quick results. But you're building something different, something real, something lasting, and that takes time. So don't rush it, respect it, stay with it, because the moment you're tempted to quit is often the moment you're closest to progress. And in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something critical, momentum. Because once things start moving, you need to know how to keep them moving, how to build speed, how to build consistency at a higher level. Because starting is one thing, but sustaining progress, that's what creates freedom. Chapter 15, Momentum changes everything. There is a moment in every transformation that changes the pace of everything. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't look like a breakthrough, but you feel it. Things start to move, not perfectly, not instantly, but differently. That moment is momentum, and once you have it, everything becomes easier. Not easy, but easier, because now you're not starting from zero. You're building on something, and that changes how you think, how you act, how you show up. Let's go back for a second. In the beginning, everything feels heavy. Every action takes effort. Every decision feels forced. Every step feels slow, because you're pushing against resistance, old habits, old patterns, old thinking. Everything is pulling you back, so progress feels difficult. But when you stay consistent, when you keep showing up, something starts to shift. The resistance weakens. The actions become familiar. The effort feels lighter. And suddenly, you're not forcing yourself anymore. You're flowing. That's momentum. Let me explain it in a simple way. At first, you push the wheel. It's heavy. It barely moves. You question if it's even working, but you keep pushing. And slowly, it starts turning, then faster, then smoother, until eventually it starts moving on its own. Now you're not pushing as hard, but it's moving faster. That's the power of momentum. And this is where most people miss out, because they stop. Before momentum builds, they quit in the heavy phase, the slow phase, the invisible phase, and because of that, they never experience the shift. They never feel the ease. They never see the acceleration, so they assume it doesn't work. But it does. They just didn't stay long enough. Now here's the key. Momentum doesn't come from intensity. It comes from consistency, not from doing everything at once, but from doing something every single day, even when it's small, even when it feels insignificant. Because those small actions stack, they build, they create movement, and that movement turns into momentum. Now, before we close, I want you to do something. Make a quiet commitment to yourself, not to me, not to anyone else, to yourself. Decide what you're going to do next, and mean it, because this moment is a turning point, and turning points only matter if you move. If this audiobook resonated with you, take a second to like it, not for the algorithm, but as a signal to yourself that this mattered. Leave a comment. Share the one idea that hit you the hardest, because putting it into words makes it real. And if you want to stay on this path, subscribe, not just to content, but to consistency, to growth, to becoming someone who doesn't go back. And if you know someone who feels stuck, who feels like they're trying but not moving, share this with them. Because sometimes one message, one shift is all it takes. Now remember this. As you move forward, an hour can change your day. A habit can change your life. But a decision can change your direction forever. And today, you made that decision. Now go build the life that proves it. End.